So a lot of Catholic converts, they feel quite that they had this relationship where they couldn't access God directly. They can't talk to God directly. They had to always have an intermediary, a priest, even confessing your sins, all of that. What they find refreshing about Islam is, first of all, that Islam explains the position of Jesus, Isa, alayhi salam, very clearly in a completely understandable way, So it does away with the Trinity. And actually, in Christian history, there were many people who didn't believe in the Trinity, people like Isaac Newton. So it's not, it's something that many people came to, even those who weren't introduced to Islam, But these women, they found this very compelling. Also, the fact that they could talk to God directly. They don't need to go to a priest. They don't need somebody in the middle. That was the first big thing that attracted women to Islam. The second thing that attracted women to Islam is, believe it or not, Muslim masculinity. Okay, so the women said often they had never experienced men the way they experienced Muslim men. So the good behavior of the Muslim men that they came across, being respectful, not wanting to have a relationship with them, not only trying to, attract them, use them, discard them. So many of them had negative experiences with men, and they come to the conclusion that the only thing men want them for is, one thing, basically for exploitation. That when they met Muslim men and saw what a Muslim family was like, for example, and the role of the Muslim man in that family, that was very attractive to them. The third thing that attracted female converts to Islam is the prospect of a life without intoxicants and a clean life. So many people's lives in Britain, America, and in Western countries in general are blighted by alcohol. We don't realize it, especially those of us who've grown up as Muslim. It's not something in our lives. But what you realize when you interview these women is that so many of them grew up with parents who were alcoholics. In fact, I don't understand why it's not considered child abuse, to be an alcoholic and have children who you're supposed to be responsible for and that you're looking after. So many of them had suffered because of that. And then also from partners as well who were addicted to alcohol, that this idea that they could have a life without those things, without drugs, without alcohol, and for it to be a clean life really appealed to them. The fourth element that attracted women to Islam was actually the family, the Muslim family. Okay, so many of them told me that they were for the first time invited to a Muslim home. A Muslim family would share their meal with them, and they would sit there and this was the first time they had been in a family that was a warm, caring, complete family. So I think the fact that unfortunately in countries like Britain, we have a phrase, broken Britain, because so many families are broken. I think last year was the first year that the majority of children that were born outside of marriage. And what we find is that, and NatCen, which is an organization that does surveys and statistics, they say that 1 million children in the UK have no male figure in their life at all. So you can see this is what we mean by broken Britain, right? It looks good on the outside, but unfortunately what's happening on the inside, there is societal decay. There's decay of the family. And so these women, when they first entered a Muslim home, or when they were welcomed into the Muslim community and they saw that actually this is the norm in the Muslim community, right? Having an intact family, or even just having a family that actually cares, gets together, all the things that we take for granted. This really attracted them to Islam because they wanted that. And the last big factor that I found in my research that attracted women to Islam was, again, believe it or not, the hijab and Islamic ideals of womanhood. So some of them talked about how they grew up with Muslim girls. So I remember growing up in the UK, sometimes we would be the only one who's wearing the hijab, right? The only Muslim sometimes. And so this really resonated with me. They said that they grew up with Muslim girls in their schools and they would always secretly admire them, which is quite strange because, when we were growing up, we always thought we were treated, people were racist towards us sometimes and we've suffered discrimination because of it. But actually, these women were saying that the hijab was something that attracted them. This idea of having a dignified, modest upbringing. And also, like I said, sisterhood. The idea of sisterhood, so many women said things like, before they became Muslim, they never experienced sisterhood because they were always in competition with other women. They were always, first of all, in mixed environments. And so, women, I think it's been proven psychologically that when women and men are in mixed environments, even if there's one man in a group of women, the women will vie for the attention of that man, even subconsciously. And so having gone from that and come to see what Islamic sisterhood was like, this was very attractive to them. One more thing I mentioned is that many of them had never been looked after in terms of financially provided for by men. Okay, so sometimes even their fathers, when they got to the age of 16, unfortunately in Western societies, fathers and daughters are almost like divorced at a certain age, right? The society, in the name of freedom, separates girls from any kind of male figure who could actually defend her, support her, provide for her. And this leaves millions of girls very vulnerable, right? They're vulnerable to being exploited by other men. They're vulnerable because they are in need of financial support or, earning money, and they sometimes, it doesn't come that easily. And some of these women said, all their lives, they've had to fend for themselves. So the idea that Islam makes it the man's responsibility to provide and protect, this was very attractive to them.